Subject-verb agreement. In this short lecture, I'll be describing particular situations that cause problems between subject and verb, or what we would refer to as subject-verb disagreement. The topics are 1. Words between subject and verb, 2. Subjects joined with and, 3. Subjects joined with or nor, 4. Indefinite pronouns such as someone, 5. Collective nouns such as jury, 6. Which, who, which, and that, 7. Plural form, singular meanings, and 8. Titles, company names, and words mentioned as words. Now, today I'm conducting this lecture within the confines of my favorite coffee house. So, if you hear me pause or say hi to someone or anything different, you'll know why. All right, let's get started. Let's start with words between subject and verb. So let's read the following sentence. The samples on the tray in the lab need testing. Word groups a lot of times come between the subject and the verb. And these word groups, such as this one, usually modify the subject. And they may contain a noun within them that first can appear to be the subject, which then causes confusion regarding subject-verb agreement. But the point is that by mentally stripping away these modifiers, you can isolate the noun that is in fact the subject. In this case, the noun is samples, and the verb is need. The samples need testing. The words on the tray in the lab, they're just simply modifiers of that subject, samples. So when we're able to strip away all this added information, and we can see the subject and the verb clearly, we're then more easily able to determine if subject-verb agreement is the case, or if they match. So would you say that the samples needs testing is correct, or is the samples need testing correct? It's the latter, the samples need testing. Now, let's take another look at another sentence. And this time, let's read it aloud to determine if it's written correctly. That is, let's see if the subject matches or agrees with the verb. High levels of air pollution damages the respiratory tract. Sounds okay, but it's not. How do we determine this? We do exactly what we did with the first sentence. Let's strip away all the modifiers. In this case, they are here and here, high and of air pollution. And now what we've done is isolated the subject and its verb, which of these is correct? Levels damage the respiratory tract, or levels damages the respiratory tract? Yeah, it's the former. Levels damage the respiratory tract. If we could have considered air pollution to have been the subject, damages would be correct. Air pollution damages the respiratory tract. But since we've determined that the subject is levels, the verb that agrees with levels is damage. Levels damage the respiratory tract. Here's another example. The slaughter of pandas for their pelts has or have caused the panda population to decline drastically. Is the subject slaughter? Pandas? Pelts? To answer that question, we would have to ask who or what is doing the action in this case being either have or has caused. So, what caused the drastic decline? It was the pandas, and it wasn't the pelts. It wasn't the pandas, it wasn't the pelts, it was the slaughter. So now that we know that the subject is slaughter and that slaughter is singular, we can determine that subject-verb agreement would require the verb has. The slaughter of pandas for their pelts has caused the panda population to decline drastically. Let's move on to subjects joined with and. We all know that the word I is a subject, as a simple subject, since it's singular, it stands alone. And these types of subjects refer to what? A person, a place, or a thing performing an action. Well, a compound subject, on the other hand, is two or more joined simple subjects. Compound subjects joined with and are nearly always plural, and we'll look at exceptions to that rule. But anyway, here's our example. Bleach and ammonia causes a toxic gas when mixed. Is this the correct subject-verb agreement? Well, once again, what we do is find our subject to determine that, right? Is it bleach? Is it ammonia? Is it both? Yes, it's both. And since we have two simple subjects combined with the word and, this is a compound subject, bleach and ammonia. So, since compound subjects are almost always plural, as was indicated just a moment ago, we should use the verb create. Bleach and ammonia create a toxic gas when mixed. Now, let's deal with that lurking question in the back of your mind. What do you mean by nearly always, Mr. McGill? Okay, sometimes the parts of a compound subject form a single unit, like, say, bacon and eggs on a menu. A sentence with a single unit, bacon and eggs, could sound something like this. Bacon and eggs is always on the menu. If, on the other hand, we said both bacon and eggs, the sentence would be both bacon and eggs are always on the menu. Here's another way to think about it. Jack and Jill is a children's poem. One poem, Jack and Jill, singular, is. Or Jack and Jill are climbing up the hill. Jack and Jill, in this case, compound subject. So we use the plural form of the verb, in this case, are. So let's move on to subjects joined with or nor. With what we just referred to as compound subjects, when we join those with or nor, we're going to make the verb agree with the part of the subject nearer to the verb. Here's an example of a fairly simple one. If an infant or a child has a high fever, call a doctor. Okay, the rule says that when we have a compound subject like this one, we're supposed to make the verb agree with whatever part of that compound subject is nearest the verb. So the verb is what? We have to determine what the verb is. Yep, it's has. The compound subject is an infant or a child. Infant being one half of the compound subject and child being the second part of the compound subject. That puts child closest to the verb has. Would you say the child has or the child have? Of course, you'd say the child has. So that means this sentence is correct as it is. But what about a sentence like this? If either his son or his daughters is or are interested, give me a call. All right. In this example, the compound subject is his son or his daughters. I'll give you a few seconds to determine in your own mind if the verb should be is or are. Okay. Because the closest part of the compound subject to the verb is daughters, which is plural, we want to use the verb are. If either his son or his daughters are interested, give me a call. All right, try this one. Neither the lab assistant nor the students was or were able to download the program. Should the verb be was or were? Okay, the verb that agrees with a plural noun, students, is were. Neither the lab assistant nor the students were able to download the program. Okay, let's talk about indefinite pronouns, excuse me. So we're all familiar with pronouns, the common pronouns such as he, she, and it, but how about indefinite pronouns? These are pronouns that refer to non-specific persons or things. I'll not bore you by reading the list you see here, but these are a list. This is a list of indefinite pronouns. And each of these is singular. That's the rule. Here's our example. Nobody who participated in the taste tests was paid. Again, think back to the beginning of this lecture. If we strip away all the words that come between the subject and the verb, the subject-verb agreement becomes obviously clear. Nobody was paid. Try this one on your own. Each of the essays has or have been graded. And here it is, has. Why? Because essays is plural. Each of the essays has been graded. Now, there are a few indefinite pronouns that may be either singular or pronoun, depending on the noun or pronoun that they're referring to. So here are two examples where one is singular, one is plural. In this, the indefinite pronoun some is singular, since when we're referring to luggage, we're discussing one element, right, or one thing. To clarify this, you wouldn't say her luggage were heavy, would you? You'd say her luggage was heavy. Singular, it. And in our second example, of course, we always think of more than one rock as being in the plural form. We could replace some of the rocks with what? They. And it becomes increasingly clear that were is the correct form of the verb. They were slippery. Some of the rocks were slippery. Let's look at collective nouns, such as jury. Collective nouns. Here's a sample list of what are called collective nouns, or their collective means nouns that name a group. These are usually treated as singular. They emphasize the group as a unit. So, thus singular. Here's an example. The Board of Trustees meets in Denver twice a year. Often you can replace these words with the word it as a reminder that they're to be treated as singular rather than plural. For example, the jury is deliberating. Could be thought of as it is deliberating. Or the class was just dismissed. It was just dismissed. That just helps you to keep in mind that these types of pronouns are used as singular. How about the words who, which, and that? These pronouns are called relative pronouns. Just like most other pronouns, they have what we call antecedents, or nouns or pronouns that they refer to. And just to let you know, the antecedents almost always come just before the relative pronouns. And relative pronouns used as subjects of subordinate clauses take verbs that agree with their antecedents. It's all fancy talk, right? But it's quite simple. It's a mouthful. Let's look at this concept carefully. Here's our example. Take a train that arrives before 6 o'clock. The relative pronoun here is that. And the subordinate clause is take a train that. What is the antecedent or the word that comes before that? It's the word train, right? So we wouldn't say the train arrived, but we'd say the train arrives. So just look at the antecedent before the pronoun. To summarize, be sure to know what the antecedent is before you determine what form of verb to use. Here's another example. Our ability to use language is one of the things that sets us apart from animals. The antecedent to the relative pronoun, that is what? Things. Okay, things. We wouldn't say things that sets us apart, rather we'd say correctly things that set us apart. Now let's look at plural form and singular meanings. Words like these are technically in the plural form. That is, they sound plural, they end in an S, nonetheless. They have a singular meaning, so we treat them as such, singular. Here's an example. Politics is among my mother's favorite pastimes. In short, these words take the singular verb is rather than its plural form, are. So it's pretty simple to remember this, right? We could put together sentences using each of these. Athletics is my favorite part of school. Economics was difficult for me. We'll leave it at that. And the last topic here is titles, company names, and words mentioned as words. All of these are to be treated as singular. Here are a few examples. Lost Cities describes the discoveries of 50 ancient civilizations. Delmonico Brothers specializes in organic produce and additive-free meats. And controlled substances is a euphemism for illegal drugs. Notice that in each of these cases, Lost Cities, Delmonico Brothers, and controlled substances, the nouns themselves look to be plural, but they're not. Each is singular. So the correct form of the verb is singular. Another thing to note is that in each case, we could replace the noun with the pronoun it. It describes the discoveries. It specializes in organic produce. It is a euphemism, etc. Thus singular. And that ends my lecture on subject-verb agreement. I hope this has been helpful. Be sure to take some time to review each of these main points, and don't forget to read a lot. Take care, and God bless.